"I'm sorry, Mr. Calder," the bank teller intoned, her voice devoid of warmth. "But there's a temporary hold on your account due to unforeseen security protocols. We can't process any transactions right now." Leon Calder, 79, a retired Army logistics officer with a silver star tucked in a drawer and a spine that refused to bend, gripped the edge of the counter. The money, his pension, had just been deposited. He needed it for his wife's emergency medication. Again. Unforeseen protocols? This is my pension. That's not just absurd, it's dangerous. The teller, eyes flat, slid a glossy brochure toward him like a peace offering. "Try the helpline," she said. "They might be able to assist." He didn't respond. She turned to the next customer, ending the conversation like it was routine. A procedural hiccup. Leon stood motionless for a moment, disbelief anchoring him. Then, methodically, he stepped aside and sat on a worn faux leather bench beneath the wide glass window. Outside, wind rattled the flag above the parking lot. Inside, the air conditioning clicked on, humming faintly over the subdued murmur of commerce. 7 minutes passed. Leon remained still, upright as ever, despite the pressure in his chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just calculation. That's when the main doors whooshed open. A man in a tailored navy suit entered, moving with intent. His face scanned the room once before locking eyes with Leon. No hesitation. Just recognition. He walked straight toward him. Leon rose slowly, puzzled. "Master Sergeant Calder?" the man asked. Leon squinted. The voice was familiar, aged by time. "Yes? I'm Alton Granger. We met in '06. Crimson exercise. I'm here to fix this." Leon blinked once. Then everything started moving. Leon Calder was a man built from patterns. Decades in military logistics had taught him the sacred rhythm of reliability, systems, checklists, routines that didn't buckle under pressure. His days now, in retirement, weren't much different. Up at 5 a.m. sharp. Coffee brewed strong by 5:15. First sip precisely at 5:30 while the old radio coughed out the morning news. Afterward, he'd tend to Elise, prepare her tea, check her oxygen levels, warm the oatmeal just how she liked it, with cinnamon and a spoonful of brown sugar. Then came the crossword, a ritual of silent partnership. Elise would do the clues, and Leon would fill them in. Once a month, on the first Tuesday, Leon visited the bank. He dressed the same way each time, pressed slacks, polished shoes, a military windbreaker no matter the weather. The tellers often called him "Sir," not out of courtesy, but because something about him demanded it. There was a steadiness to the way he moved, like even the world had to keep time with him. This month, that rhythm cracked. The bank visit was supposed to be a formality. His pension always landed like clockwork on the last day of the month, and he always withdrew what he needed for essentials, groceries, gas, and, most importantly now, Elise's medication. Her lungs, fragile from decades of damage the VA still hadn't fully diagnosed, had worsened since February. Cold air triggered her wheezing, even walking to the kitchen sometimes left her gasping. Her pulmonologist had recommended a new medication regimen, stronger, pricier. The pharmacy needed full payment up front. And Leon, as always, was ready. Until the teller told him no. The young man's name was Daniel. Mid-20s, crisply dressed, with the kind of bland corporate cheerfulness that came pre-installed with the job. Leon had dealt with him before, cordial, efficient, always eager to explain the latest policy update. But today, Daniel's composure had faltered, just slightly. "There's a hold on your account," he had said. Leon leaned in, puzzled. "I checked this morning. The deposit was there." "It is. I can see it in the system. But there's a central hold flagged by CPU. It's part of our automated fraud detection protocol. Any account movement requires a manual review. Leon frowned. CPU? Central Processing Unit, Daniel replied. It's like the core of our banking AI. If it detects anomalies, multiple logins, overlapping locations, unusual withdrawals, it locks the account until someone higher up reviews it. I haven't logged in multiple times. And I make the same withdrawals every month. Daniel gave a helpless shrug. Sometimes it misflags military pensions. The system updates constantly. You'd need to wait 24 to 48 business hours before the hold clears. Leon straightened, pressing his palm against the cool counter. That's 3 days. At most, Daniel said carefully. My wife doesn't have 3 days. The line behind Leon was beginning to grow. The woman behind him shifted her weight, checked her phone. A man sighed audibly. Is there any override? Leon asked. I'm not authorized, Daniel said. And our manager is in a meeting. I don't care about her meeting, Leon said, voice suddenly quiet and hard. Daniel hesitated. I could leave a note. Leon didn't answer. He turned, walked over to the waiting bench by the lobby window, and sat down, back straight, breathing through his teeth. The weight of everything bore down on him, Elise, the medication, the dispassionate jargon from a teller half his age. The helplessness of it all stung more than he wanted to admit. He had once routed convoys through minefields. He had tracked down missing supply pallets in enemy territory with only a clipboard and a compass. And here, now, in a bank branch with air conditioning and coffee pods, he was being asked to wait because a computer decided he might be a risk. It didn't make sense. None of it did. He thought of Elise, her skin pale, her voice thinning, her body growing smaller each month. This wasn't a delay. It was a threat. Leon pulled out his phone. Not to call the bank's helpline. He knew better than that. A looping labyrinth of automated voices and synthetic apologies awaited anyone who dared try. No, he went to his contacts list. Scrolled past names he hadn't called in years. Until he found one. It was labeled in all caps. Alton, Exec Priority, Crimson 06. Leon hadn't spoken to Alton Granger in nearly 20 years. Back then, Alton had been a rising star in the federal civilian sector, specializing in financial infrastructure stability. They'd met during Operation Crimson, the joint military-civilian exercise in 2006 designed to test America's response to catastrophic cyber attacks. Leon had been assigned as logistics coordinator. Granger had been the financial analyst responsible for continuity planning. They'd spent 3 weeks in an underground facility, simulating national blackouts, data breaches, and full economic shutdowns. It had bonded them in a strange way, men from different worlds discovering that chaos obeyed no chain of command. Before parting ways, Granger had handed Leon a card. If the system ever breaks for someone who doesn't deserve it, he had said, call me. Leon stared at the name on his screen. He didn't know if the number still worked. But he tapped it anyway. It rang once. Granger, said a voice. Crisp. Direct. Leon straightened unconsciously. Sir. This is Leon Calder. Master Sergeant, retired. Crimson Exercise, 06. There was silence. Then, Leon? My God. I remember. If you're calling this number, something's gone wrong. Leon laid it out, the deposit, the teller, the hold, Elise, the medication. Alton listened. Then his voice hardened. Which branch? Leon told him. I'm 10 minutes away, Granger said. Stay where you are. Then he hung up. Leon put the phone down in his lap. He exhaled through his nose. He wasn't sure what would happen next. He only knew that something was about to. 7 minutes later, the glass doors at the front of the bank hissed open. And the man who stepped through looked like a thunderstorm in a tailored navy suit. The branch quieted, subtly but unmistakably, when Alton Granger entered. He didn't bark orders, didn't raise his voice, didn't wave a badge. He didn't need to. He wore presence like a medal. The assistant manager glanced up from her desk and visibly froze mid-keystroke. A security guard near the ATM area straightened instinctively. Granger scanned the room once, eyes locking with Daniel, then with Leon, then settling briefly on a decorative poster about customer commitment. Leon rose. Granger stepped forward and extended his hand. "Master Sergeant Calder," he said. "Good to see you. Sorry it's under these conditions." Leon grasped it, firm. "Didn't think you'd remember me." "I remember every man who stayed awake 40 hours straight so we could model how to keep hospitals supplied during a cyber attack." Granger turned. "Let's take care of this." Daniel hovered behind the counter, blinking fast, hands now neatly folded atop the terminal like a student awaiting punishment. Granger didn't acknowledge him directly. "You. Teller. Get your branch manager. Now." The sharpness in his tone removed all ambiguity from the word now. Daniel swallowed and scurried toward the office door. The customers who had been growing restless moments ago were suddenly watching the unfolding scene with the passive attention of those witnessing something just outside their jurisdiction but well within their curiosity. Leon followed Granger at a nod. They crossed into the manager's office just as Daniel returned, trailed by a woman in her early 40s, Ms. Ryland, who wore authority like a tight blazer, clean, overstructured, and uncomfortable. "Mr. Granger," she began, clearly trying to recalibrate her tone as she realized just who had walked in. "We weren't expecting." "No," he interrupted. "You weren't. That's the problem." She blinked. "If there's an issue, we're happy to review." "This isn't a review. This is a correction. You denied a decorated veteran access to his own pension during a time-sensitive medical emergency. Because of a software flag?" Daniel stood behind her, paling by the second. Ms. Ryland cleared her throat. "It was a standard CPU hold. AI-based fraud detection. The system flagged the transaction. We can't override it until..." "Until what?" "Until someone gets a form signed? Until Elise Calder's condition worsens?" Leon said nothing, just stared quietly at the nameplate on her desk, the gears in his mind turning, not with rage, but something colder. "There was no override because our systems flag military pensions differently now," Ryland said, voice weakening. "Since the patch last month. The flag holds all deposits over a certain threshold if the login is marked out of pattern." "And where in the customer interface is that disclosed?" Granger snapped. "Where does it say, by the way, if our AI thinks you're acting strange, we'll block your pension and wish you luck with your dying spouse?" Neither answered. Granger leaned in slightly. "You do know about Directive Echo 9? Ryland blinked. It's a standing internal policy. Enacted under my signature. Veterans' accounts, when flagged, must receive manual oversight within 30 minutes. Immediate review for medical, housing, or dependent care-related withdrawals. Every branch was briefed. Every manager was trained. Or were they? Daniel stammered. I wasn't trained on that, sir. I didn't know." "Then your training failed you. And more importantly, it failed this man." Granger pulled out his phone, dialed a number without looking. "IT. I need an override on CPU hold account 5681 Calder." "Yes. Granite Trust Authorization, Granger Personal Code Gamma Prime." A pause. "Flag this as a training failure. Patch 12F deployment caused unnecessary freezing of veteran accounts. Initiate a full audit." Another pause. Good. Confirmed. He ended the call and turned to Leon. Your funds are now accessible. Effective immediately. The bank will also be covering Elisa's medication expenses for the next 12 months. Retroactive to last week. Leon's eyes widened. That's not necessary. It is, Granger said. Not because we owe it to you. Because it's the only decent thing to do. Ryland started to protest. That's not bank policy. I am the policy, Granger snapped. If you have a problem with that, you're welcome to take it up with the board, which, last I checked, still has my name at the top. Ryland shrank slightly. Granger stepped closer to Leon. I didn't come here as a CEO. I came here because, when the system fails someone like you, it means we've built something brittle. You've seen brittle systems before. They collapse under pressure. Leon gave a slow nod. They sure do. You were part of a generation that showed us what resilience looked like. I can't fix everything. But I can damn well fix this. Daniel looked as though he wanted to disappear into the wall. Ryland had gone quiet. Leon looked down at his phone as it buzzed, a notification, his balance available. Every cent where it belonged. Granger clapped him on the shoulder. I'll walk you to the teller. Personally. He led Leon out of the office, and the rest of the branch watched in stunned silence as the CEO of their parent corporation guided a veteran to the counter. Daniel returned to his station, trembling. Process the withdrawal, Granger ordered. Amount? 600 even, Leon said. Daniel typed. The cash came swiftly. No resistance. No security protocols. Just paper in an envelope. Granger handed it to Leon. Use it well. I always do. They shook hands again. Customers had resumed pretending not to watch, but eyes flicked upward from phones. A camera above the entrance blinked silently. Leon nodded. Thank you. Granger held his gaze. Don't thank me. Just, be well. And tell Elise we're sorry it ever came to this. Leon gave the faintest smile. She'll probably just call you a suit. I deserve it. With that, Granger turned and walked out of the bank, every eye trailing him until the doors hissed shut behind him. The day Alton Granger walked into Branch 47 of First National Fidelity would be remembered for a long time, but not for who he was. For what changed. Within minutes of leaving Leon's side, Granger had returned to his black Lincoln sedan, phone to his ear, voice like a scalpel. As the vehicle pulled from the lot, conversations inside the bank resumed, but not without caution. Everyone had seen something they weren't meant to, real authority used for someone who couldn't wield it himself. No nameplate, no appointment, no credentials. Just presence, and principle. Back at Granite Trust's downtown headquarters, the fallout began immediately. Granger entered the 36th floor like a man mid-march. His executive assistant barely had time to stand before he issued orders. Cancel my lunch. Clear the next 2 hours. And get legal on line 2. HR on 3. Compliance on 4. Yes, sir. May I ask? He was already gone, office door swinging shut. 10 minutes later, the core leadership of Granite Trust was on a cross-call, screens lighting up like Command Central. Most had been through crises before, earnings reports, stock dips, algorithmic exposure. But few had seen Granger this cold. We've built an institution, he began, on the promise of trust. And today, that institution failed. The executives glanced at each other uneasily. One of our veterans, a man who served in logistics, multiple deployments, Silver Star recipient, was denied his pension. Not because of fraud. Not even a clerical error. Because our AI flagged his account and no one had the training, or the courage, to override it. Someone spoke up. We designed CPU to protect. Spare me, Granger cut in. You designed it to minimize liability. What you didn't design was a human failsafe. We had directives in place, Echo 9. And when was the last refresher training issued? Silence. How many new hires in the last 6 months have even heard of Echo 9? More silence. Granger stood. Let me be very clear, there will be no hiding behind policy. No shielding behind protocol. If our systems cannot distinguish between protecting assets and endangering lives, then we are the liability. He clicked a button on his tablet, sending a live update to the internal HR network. All veteran-linked accounts flagged by CPU are to receive immediate human review upon trigger. No exceptions. No delays. Regional managers will enforce this within 72 hours. I want acknowledgement receipts from every branch. Another exec raised a hand tentatively. That's going to cause massive strain on personnel, Alton. Then hire better personnel. Or train them properly. He sat, eyes steely. Directive Echo 9 is now Echo Prime. It's not a memo. It's a core value. Meanwhile, back at Branch 47, the air had not returned to normal. Daniel, still visibly shaken, sat in the break room with a lukewarm coffee and a 1,000-yard stare. Ms. Ryland stood at her desk, reading an email on her screen again and again. The subject line read: Immediate action required, veteran oversight reform. Attached was a memo signed personally by Alton Granger. Not auto-signed. Not on behalf of. It carried his name, his title, and a quote at the top. Our rules should protect people, not trap them. Especially the people who wore our flag. Training requirements followed. Mandatory sessions. Live webinars. Simulations. Veterans flagged in any branch would now light up the dashboard in bold red, requiring not just acknowledgement, but resolution, documented and timed. Ryland exhaled through her teeth. She wasn't sure what stung more, the reprimand in the memo or the fact that she had seen it coming the moment Granger had locked eyes with her. She called Daniel into her office. He entered like a student summoned by the principal. Close the door. He obeyed. Daniel, how long have you been with us? 18 months. And how many hours of compliance training have you completed? Last year I did the 7-hour bundle. And the diversity one. And the cyber fraud module. Did any of those teach you how to handle a veteran pension flag? No, he admitted. I didn't even know that was a thing. I just follow the scripts. And CPU flagged it, so I didn't think, she interrupted. Didn't ask questions. Didn't escalate. He flushed red. Daniel, let me be clear, I'm not firing you. Yet. But if you don't complete the new veteran training within the next 5 days, and pass the oversight scenario test, you're gone. Is that clear? He nodded, small and unsure. Yes, ma'am. Outside the office, the other tellers whispered quietly between transactions. One of them, a senior named Teresa, muttered to another. Used to be, you talk to your customers. Look them in the eye. Now it's all red lights and keyboard taps. The younger teller beside her, Evan, frowned. But isn't the AI supposed to be better than we are? Depends what you mean by better. Elsewhere, Granger wasn't done. He contacted media relations. Informed them that a public-facing version of the protocol reform would be released under a new initiative, Veteran First Access. It would be marketed as a security and dignity measure. He wanted the language firm, not flashy. Respectful, not promotional. No ads. No commercials, he told them. This isn't a brand moment. It's a repair. By the time he left the office that evening, exhausted and quieter, his assistant handed him a final memo. What's this? Letter from legal. Advising you that waiving medication costs for Mr. Calder may set a precedent. Granger scanned the note. He pulled out a pen, scratched a single line across the page, and wrote in the margin. Let it. Then he handed it back. He stood by the window of his office, looking out across the city skyline. A long pause. Then, send flowers to Mrs. Calder. Card reads, your husband reminded us who we're supposed to be. The assistant nodded and quietly closed the door. By Wednesday morning, the ripples had become waves. Branch 47 opened its doors to an unusual hush. Gone was the murmur of routine greetings, the easy patter of regulars cashing checks or asking about mortgage rates. Everyone inside had heard. Even if they hadn't seen the man himself, they knew. The CEO had walked in, overridden protocol, and corrected a wrong with military precision. The morning paper hadn't caught wind, but the internal chatter across First National Fidelity had exploded. Daniel arrived early. Earlier than usual, actually. He'd barely slept. The night before, he'd gone down an online rabbit hole, reading about Leon Calder. 2 deployments. Distinguished service. Wounded once, but never left his post. Logistics officer who once rerouted a stalled convoy through a flash-flooded region to deliver aid to a field hospital. Medals didn't usually move Daniel. But the photo of Leon, back straight, hands behind his back, in front of a row of tired medics, left an imprint. He took his seat behind the teller line with no fanfare. A new sticker adorned his terminal, EchoPrime access required. It blinked red. He clicked it. A dashboard opened, listing pending flags across the region. 17 veterans in review. 3 overdue. His stomach tightened. Ms. Ryland had arrived 10 minutes before him. She wasn't speaking much either, save for what was necessary. A printed version of the CEO's directive sat beside her keyboard, annotated in blue ink. She had spent hours the night before parsing every line of it. She wasn't going to be blindsided again. Not by a policy she hadn't read, and certainly not by someone like Granger. Just after 10 a.m., a conference call started. Mandatory. Nationwide. All branch managers logged in. The video began with a plain slide. Veteran Oversight Reform, Implementation and Compliance. Presented by Alton Granger, CEO, Granite Trust Corporation. Then his face appeared. No preamble. No welcome. Let's get to the point, he said. His tone was stripped of corporate polish. It was the same voice he had used in that office with Ryland and Daniel, clean, focused, surgically aimed. Our institution serves millions. That scale is a privilege. But scale does not absolve us of responsibility, it amplifies it. Especially when it comes to the people whose lives we affect directly, immediately. He leaned forward. Veterans' accounts aren't special cases. They're human ones. And no algorithm can afford to forget that. Last week, our system failed. Not because it crashed. Not because it was hacked. But because it worked exactly the way we told it to. He let that settle. You've all received Directive EchoPrime. You've seen the new dashboard. And starting today, compliance isn't optional. We will be auditing every branch. Every teller who dismisses a flagged veteran without review will be reported. Every manager who overlooks an override will answer directly to me. Somewhere in the Brady branch, a manager shifted uncomfortably. Granger continued. We have also partnered with the Veterans Advocacy Network. They will now have a direct line to report unresolved cases. Our new ombudsman, Alicia Kent, whose father served in Korea, will be fielding appeals and ensuring your branches follow through. The slide changed. New policies. Highlighted boxes. A tab labeled Human Override required beside each AI flag. Then Granger's face returned. This isn't a PR move. You won't see commercials. There will be no celebratory press releases. This is us, quietly admitting we broke something, and building a better replacement. That afternoon, at Branch 47, Daniel was assigned his first veteran follow-up. Client name, Patrick Ingram. Account flag, rapid withdrawal pattern, multiple IP login alerts. Service record, U.S. Navy, Gulf War, PTSD-related disability pension. Status, flagged by CPU for potential fraud. Daniel clicked into the case. Something felt familiar. The flags, yes, they mirrored the ones Leon Calder had triggered. A login from a new device. Withdrawal attempt from a nearby pharmacy. But instead of freezing, the system now issued a single-line prompt. Does this flag justify delaying access to funds that may affect housing, medication, or survival? Daniel's hand hovered over the keys. He clicked Review in Progress, then picked up the phone. Ingram Residence, came a voice. Mr. Ingram, this is Daniel calling from First National. I'd like to speak with you about your recent transaction. We noticed a flag and just want to make sure everything's alright, and that you're not waiting on anything urgent. A pause. Then, hoarse and surprised, you're calling to check. Yes, sir. We just want to be sure your account is functioning as it should. My wife's prescription. She's been waiting on it. I thought you folks locked me out again. Not this time, sir, Daniel said. Give me 5 minutes. I'll call you right back. He clicked Override issued, then Reviewed and approved. The red light faded. He sat back, stunned by how fast that had gone when a human, just one, had the authority to say yes. Back at headquarters, Granger sat in his office, the memo reports pouring in. One after another, branches were submitting their compliance affirmations. Call logs showed spikes in successful veteran resolutions. Training completions surged. The system was shifting, still flawed, still dependent on people, but shifting. He looked out his window at the clouds casting shadows over the skyline. His assistant knocked. Mr. Granger, there's something else. Let me guess. Legal again? No, sir. This time, it's a letter. She handed it to him. A cream envelope. No return address. Granger opened it. Inside, written in crisp cursive. Mr. Granger. Thank you. The medication arrived. Leon's steadier now. And I'm breathing easier, too. Elise Calder. He stared at it for a moment, then closed his eyes. He had fixed one thing. There were thousands more. But one mattered. One was a start. He slid the letter beside a photograph on his desk, Crimson Exercise, 2006. 10 men. 3 women. All in black fatigues, gathered around a projection screen. And Leon, front row, clipboard in hand, smiling like he knew something no one else did. Change didn't arrive with fanfare. It came subtly, first as whispers, then as mandates, then as routine. Inside First National Fidelity, people started referring to it simply as the shift. Not because of the drama, but because it touched everything. The new Echo Prime protocol went live across every branch. No longer could the system flag a veteran's pension and freeze it unchallenged. CPU still detected anomalies, still raised red alerts, but now a timer began the moment the flag appeared. A human had 30 minutes to intervene, assess, and, if needed, override. For the first time in years, accountability felt human again. Branch 47 changed fastest. Not because they were better, but because they'd seen it happen, up close. They'd heard the steel in Granger's voice, seen the sharp edge of real leadership. Daniel, once an average teller following scripts and system cues, was now the first to respond when an Echo Prime alert came through. The first day the system blinked red, he didn't hesitate. The client, Albert Reese, Marine Corps, 1983 to 1991, had attempted a wire transfer from a rehab center. It triggered the usual fraud filters: new location, unfamiliar IP, rapid withdrawal. The old CPU would have locked it down for days. Instead, Daniel picked up the phone. "Mr. Reese," he said, after verifying the details, "we flagged your transfer. Can I ask, are you making this payment for treatment?" Reese sounded surprised. "You mean you're calling to check instead of freezing it?" "We are," Daniel replied. "You're all set." 1 minute later, he tapped "Override approved," and the red banner disappeared. It didn't feel like rebellion. It felt like repair. At headquarters, the reforms were no longer isolated changes, they were the framework for a full transformation. Under Granger's directive, every regional manager received a compliance checklist. Completion was mandatory. Branches that failed to meet review standards faced internal audits. A quiet culture war had begun: automation versus accountability. Granger made weekly calls to branches, speaking not with executives, but with staff. He kept them brief. Clear. "We protect people, not just policies," he reminded them. "Especially those who once protected us." And people listened. In the break room at Branch 47, someone printed out a quote from his latest memo and pinned it to the bulletin board. "Good systems catch errors. Great systems catch people." Below it, a photo of Leon Calder had been taped up. Smiling. Back straight. Unbending. Ms. Ryland, once bristling at oversight, changed in quiet ways. She still ran a tight branch, but when a customer raised their voice or asked for help, she leaned in instead of reaching for a rulebook. She even called Elise Calder directly, asking if the medication reimbursements had been processed smoothly. "There's a new rep," Elise had said. "He's polite. Calls me ma'am so often it's almost a tick." Ryland had actually chuckled. "We're learning." The ripples didn't stop at Fidelity. Once the internal memo leaked, intentionally or not, other banks began reviewing their AI protocols. Public pressure mounted from veterans groups. Financial watchdogs started asking why one institution had taken the lead while others lagged behind. And then came the article. The Sergeant, the CEO, and the Flagged Account, a quiet revolt in American banking. It was published in a Sunday finance feature, read by millions. It chronicled Leon Calder's story in clean prose, how a retired logistics officer faced a system that forgot him, and how one call reignited a chain of overdue corrections. No embellishments. Just truth. Leon didn't know about the article until the local librarian brought him a copy. He and Elise read it together at the kitchen table. "That picture's awful," Leon muttered. "They spelled your name right," Elise replied. "A first." The article quoted Granger directly. "Some veterans come home and expect nothing. That doesn't mean we should give them less." Leon folded the paper and placed it in the drawer beside his silver star. "A new edition." "You think it made a difference?" he asked Elise. She touched his hand. "I know it did." A week later, a letter arrived from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Stamped. Formal. "Mr. Calder. We've reviewed the circumstances surrounding your account incident. While this situation falls outside VA control, it highlights systemic vulnerabilities affecting thousands. Your case is being used as a reference point for financial reform efforts across partner institutions. Thank you. Respectfully. Robert Blanton, Deputy Secretary." Leon read it twice. Said nothing. Just added it to the drawer, now more archive than storage. Then, quietly, came something unexpected. A box arrived. No sender listed. Inside, beneath blue velvet, lay a silver medallion engraved with the Granite Trust seal and 3 lines. For service. For sacrifice. For change. There was no letter. No PR. Just the weight of acknowledgement, delivered not to fix a past mistake, but to honor what had come from it. Back at HQ, Granger placed a matching medallion on his shelf beside the framed photo from Crimson '06. It reminded him of systems. Of failure. Of a man who called when others would have folded. He never mentioned Leon publicly again. But the story was now part of the company's origin myth. Not loud. Not televised. Just passed down in rooms where policies were written and systems were rebuilt. And every time a red flag blinked on a terminal, someone somewhere remembered to ask the question. Is this just protocol, or is this someone's life? Never forgotten.